Let's keep this clean. Let's not insult people's favourite things. You agree to no part of that. Okay, cool. Alright, everybody. It is a momentous time in all of our lives as a species, as humans, as apes that became more. It's the 1 year anniversary of the Real World podcast, and I can't believe we've made it a year. I'm Matt Waters. I, in many ways, made this possible. Mike Thomas had his website, entertherealworld.com, where you should all go and check things out. And then he was like, hey, Matt, come be podcast monkey. And I did. Mike, 1 year on, how do you feel about that decision?
Sure.
Cool. Sweet. That's really going to set the tone for what you're going to hear in the next, probably only like an hour, I don't know. We decided to celebrate the 1 year anniversary while we're sort of between series of podcasts, we would, for fun, talk about our favourite movies. Not just spitball about, here's 6 movies that I like, and here's some Mike likes. We have gone with our definitive favourites each. I have brought to the class for consideration Adventureland, and Mike has gone with Hoop Dreams. 2 very unlikely movies to be anyone's favourite film, I would say, is a fair thing to say. I will acknowledge it about mine. I don't know if you are offended by that statement about Hoop Dreams. It's a 3-hour documentary about basketball. It's not the most likely thing for someone to go to. But that's not to say neither of them are good. And I think it's important to say up front that we're talking about favourites here, not like... I'm not putting to everyone listening that Adventureland is the best movie ever made. It's just, it is my personal favourite. And that's a distinction everyone has to make on the internet generally, I think. But with that being said, let's give Mike an opportunity to tear apart my favourite film in the world.
So I like Adventureland. I saw it for the first time probably about 5 years ago. I was pleasantly surprised at the time. I wasn't entirely sure how I felt about Jesse Eisenberg. I'd seen some stuff that I liked, but was not, I was not set in any opinion on him. I did not really see Kristen Stewart in much of anything or know her for much of anything other than Twilight and a bit role in Into the Wild. Oddly enough, I actually really did like her in that bit role in Into the Wild. I thought, oh, she's a good actress. And obviously, a decade later, we know she's actually a great actress. Doesn't always get the best roles, or at least is too well known for one really, really bad role. So, on paper, this movie now, in retrospect, kind of looks kind of amazing. You have Eisenberg. Eisenberg's probably stock has actually dropped considerably since then, despite getting an Oscar nomination the year before. But Kristen Stewart, Ryan Reynolds, whose career has finally hit its peak after finally being the star of a major blockbuster, or being a star of a successful blockbuster. Martin Starr, his career has not really gone up or down so much, but he's still always been well-liked. Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig are bigger than ever in a lot of ways. On paper, this is a really, really cool-looking movie, and in execution, it's a pretty cool movie still. It captures a point in someone's life that, if not universal, at least very relatable for a large percentage of the population in relative middle to upper middle class functioning societies. And I don't have a soft spot for it. I never had a soft spot for it, which is probably why I always was like raise my eyebrows when you said it was your favorite film ever, because I find there's a bit of a disconnect for me with it in that on that level. Like, it will never be at that level for me. Maybe, and I saw it at a point in my life where I should have had that connection to it. Like, for instance, I've never gone back and rewatched Into the Wild. I assume Into the Wild is probably a very obnoxious movie, but when I saw it in college, I was like, oh my god, this movie is speaking to me. So if someone had said Into the Wild was their favorite movie ever, I'd be like, I can understand that. I don't know if I respect it, but I understand it. With Adventureland, I don't know, there's something a little bit missing for me. Appreciate it on the level that you clearly do. Just tell me why you appreciate it so much.
I'm used to this reaction. Like, this is the reaction. It's not that people are like, oh, that movie sucks. I'm sure there are plenty of people that don't like it. And even I, on my first watch, wasn't like, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It came to me quite gradually that this is my favourite. When I first saw it, I was like, yeah, just fun little indie film, great little cast, whatever. And it was just, for a long time, my favourite movie was Good Will Hunting, which is a far more sort of cliche answer. You know, it's a very famous film, Oscars, blah, blah, blah. And it was just, I watched this. I don't even know how I came across it, to be honest. Like, I think I just bought it on DVD based on someone I like being in it. I guess I like Jesse Eisenberg quite a lot. I think The Social Network is probably what did it, actually. I think I then was like, oh, I'll go watch more stuff he's in, because he seemed quite cool. And I got this, and, you know, like I said, watched it first time. It's like, yeah, it's fine. And it's a film that I've watched, like, probably at least a dozen times at this point. And, like, I've watched it with people who've never seen it before, just to be like, oh, hey, check this out. And it's that thing where I just suddenly realised, like, hey, I think this might be my favourite film. I think it's Forgetting Sarah Marshall. There was a critic that said about it that, like, one of the best things about it is that you could basically just watch it, like, 3 times in a row. Whether you feel that way about that film or not is irrelevant, but just, it's that for me. It's like, it's something that, like, I would watch, like, if I was bored, I'd watch it. If I was sad, I'd watch it if I was happy. It's warm for me, and I cannot really explain why it, like, really got its hooks into me in a way that it clearly didn't for other people. Maybe it is just watching it repeatedly, but I've done my best to lay out kind of a map of why I like it so much. In the simplest terms, it is like a real... If I drew a Venn diagram of things I like about movies, there wouldn't be, like, a perfect fit in the middle, because this lacks, like, ninjas fighting each other. And somehow there's got to be a way to get them in there. But just generally, this ticks more boxes than just about anything else. Set in the 80s, I'm a huge fan of the 80s, even though I was only just born in them, so don't actually have an authentic sense of what they're like. But just, I like 80s stuff. It is a workplace comedy. Big fan of that. I have worked a dead-end job that I hated, but, like, had camaraderie with colleagues who also hated it, so I appreciate seeing that on screen, whether it's TV or a movie or whatever. I like seeing people doing a shitty job and having fun anyway. Set in a small town. It's a wanky little indie film. Like, I'll admit that. I'm into those. And I really, really love the soundtrack. Soundtracks are a huge thing for me. I know you're, like, not as much of a song and dance kind of a dude, but, like, for me, that is something that will set a film apart for me if I really enjoy the soundtrack. And this thing's got The Replacements, The Cure, Husker Du, Lou Reed, like, a lot of bands that I really, really like. Some of them I may even have started liking after watching this. I don't actually even remember, but I love the music. I love that it's set in the 80s. I love all that about it. So just from that alone, like, almost on a mathematical level, add up those ingredients, there's no way it couldn't be my favourite film in some ways. But to delve slightly deeper, I guess, the big things that I would really, like, get evangelical about are the cast, the kind of love rectangle, pentagon, hexagon, I don't even know what to call it, and the way that's presented as a sort of offshoot of that, the James and M relationship. And I actually really like Ryan Reynolds as Connell specifically. Like, I know, like, I've talked about the cast generally as being one of the things I want to talk about, but that Connell performance I actually am a huge fan of. I
thought I wanted to touch, I think, on one more idea in the film that I think is really well executed, and I think that will kind of naturally lead us to talking about the cast and their performances and their characters specifically. I think if there's one idea this movie captures fairly damn well, it's that, you know, uncertainty of your early 20s about what you want, about what is important to you, who you think you are compared to what your actions say you are.
You're describing me, like, Mike. You are describing me.
I put it this way. That aspect alone, and based on our own, you know, our friendship and knowing you, I was like, I feel like that's why you love this movie.
Yeah, I don't want to, like, say I see myself as James, because, like, this dude is clearly, like, cleverer than I am. But just, I recognize, for better and worse, I have kind of romanticized, like, who I am, and I feel he does that to an extent. And, like, I don't think he's a bad dude. He's generally a good dude. But, I kind of, that 20s, post-university, what do I do with my life, malaise really speaks to me.
And I think, you know, that idea is not, certainly, I mean, one of the most famous or infamous films of all time is called The Graduate and is about this very idea. So it's not like they're discovering new territory here. But I do think this movie captures that, and it also kind of captures it at different stages of your life. You know, you have the Eisenberg, Stewart, and Starr, who are all relatively fresh out of college, it seems like. Maybe Starr's a year or two ahead of them. Stewart's, I guess Stewart's in the same spot.
Yeah,
Ryan Reynolds, who's probably like 5 to 10 years ahead of them.
Yeah.
But kind of stuck in the choices he's made.
I'd say closer to 10, but yeah.
Yeah, and then I would say 10 to 15 years ahead of them is then, you know, Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, who've kind of settled. And I think if I have two issues with the movie. One is because those two were not available enough. You don't really get to explore those two as much as characters. And I remember that really stuck out to me at the first viewing, being like, "Wow, I can't believe how little these two are in it." I know there were outside reasons for that, but I think the movie is missing that aspect of it, of actually getting to know them as characters.
Yeah.
And I think if there's another thing that's missing, I think an important character or component of the post-college or early 20s, mid-20s exploration is seeing the couple that has already decided this is what I want, and also the issues and the baggage that comes with that, because that can be equally traumatic and frustrating and confusing.
Yeah.
Especially when you're comparing yourself to people who have not settled into that. And then, you know, the whole grass is always greener concept that both sides are then facing, where they see, oh, wow, I have no stability in my life. Look at that happy couple. I want to be them. The happy couple's like, oh my God, my life is already decided for me. Look at the food they always have. And I do think that is a crucial element of that idea that was missing.
That's true.
And it's not even so much, and that's not me saying I don't like the film. I think part of the reason why I wouldn't put that film on that next level is for not going as in-depth as it could have. But this is like, we're talking about the difference between good and great. We're talking about the difference between fun and what's greater than fun. Nothing's greater than fun.
Nothing's greater than fun.
More than just fun. Yeah, but let's dive into a lot of the characters, because I do think they touch on some really cool ideas here that not all films do.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on. Obviously, some parts get a lot more time than others. Like, there is a story that's literally, if you like counted the seconds that the story is being told, it's probably about a 4 or 5 minute story for one of the side characters. But I do like that there is like a little something going on for most of the cast. I kind of want to save James and Emily until later, but just broadly speaking, I think, well, talking about everyone, I guess first, I like that nobody's like too perfect. I know you say it's kind of like missing like the almost cliched happy people to aspire to almost, but
I guess just to clarify, I don't mean that they are perfect or cliche or happy. It's more that on paper they represent stability, but in actuality there's so much internal conflict when you are that stable person about whether or not that's actually what you want.
Yeah. I like everybody in this movie is flawed. I like that about it. Like, I don't want to like bag on people's appearances because that's not cool. But like, Kristen Stewart isn't like overly made up or like glamorized. Really, like, she's beautiful actress, everything. But like, I like that they don't like knock you over the head with, "Oh, isn't she stunning?" And like, even Lisa P, this like mythical character they have, like even she looks a little bit like. It sounds horrible, but normal. But I like that. This seems like a believable group of people, I guess. Is what I mean. I think Jesse Eisenberg is like charming as hell in this, personally. He's got a lot of traits that like in some films he would be cast as like a geek, like a bullied character, someone to be made fun of but ultimately triumphs or something. And I actually like that it goes the other way with it, where like, yeah, he's obviously like kind of nerdy in some ways, like, you know, he reads poetry and he's got aspirations to go be a travel essayist and all this, but no one really like gives him a hard time about any of this because he has a kind of assertiveness. Like, he's not intimidated by like I said, this Lisa P character who's like the cool chick. Like, he's not like intimidated by her. He's like a confident young man. Sometimes I guess some of that confidence may be a little bit misplaced, but I don't know, I think it's not a very typical I don't know, I guess you do see some characters like this in film, but I guess I just appreciate that, like, he's smart, but he's not punished for being smart, and he does have a sort of unique charm to him, where he's not, like, cracking all the jokes, but he is still... I don't know, it's sincere, I guess. There's, like, an honesty to the character.
I think it's a slight variation on a lot of characters Eisenberg played around this time period.
I did begin following him from film to film, and some of them burned me.
You know, I would consider his character in The Squid and the Whale to be one of the most punchable human beings of all time. Only exceeded by his father in the movie.
Yeah.
And he's obviously very similar. That character is very similar to his interpretation of Zuckerberg in The Social Network, where you certainly don't come out of that film with an overly positive viewpoint of Zuckerberg.
At best, you feel sorry for him, I think, is what they're going for.
Yeah, I think that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Here, there's a lot of that in the DNA of James Brennan here. I think where I differ with you from, it's not that he is the typical nerd who's actually bullied. I think it's more, he's not the typical 22-year-old nerd who's got a grudge against the world and thus is a huge dick as a result.
Yeah.
And it's a much more empathetic character. But you can kind of see he's coming up the two paths. Mm-hmm. And you could very easily see this person turning into a Mark Zuckerberg or whatever his character's name was in Squid the Whale, where, you know, he's intelligent, but, you know, he's also been told he's intelligent his entire life.
Yeah. He does definitely wander into becoming an asshole. Or sort of dips his toe in that water towards the end, and, like, he gets checked for it, and I like that, you know.
I do too. So I guess to me, I don't think he was. I guess to me, like, you could see this was a kid who was bullied in high school, but in college, eventually, you know, when you're just an adult, you're just obnoxious if you haven't figured it out by then, and how to be a human being. And he's, you know, straddling that line a little bit. And but I think that also kind of speaks to what I think is probably the best part about this film is just the great amount of empathy Greg Mottola had for all the characters. Yeah, you know, and that. I mean, probably with Ryan Reynolds, the least amount of empathy, but even with that, there's a certain amount of tragedy or pity to him that, you know, you might not necessarily get from that character in general. Yeah. But yeah, I think Eisenberg here is a more restrained version of what we'd come to expect from it at this point in time.
I think this is like the peak charming young Eisenberg performance that he would... I mean, you're right, he does play characters who are somewhat similar to this. Like, he's given better, like, acting performances before and since and everything, but I think in terms of, like, the charming 20-something, he's not really a slacker, but, you know, just a low energy, but, like, this is, like, the one for me that he would do slight variations of, and then he started going into more, like, dramatic roles.
It's interesting because I'm looking back at his career now, and
it's really taken a turn, hasn't it?
I don't know how I feel about him as an actor overall, based on his actual work.
Yeah, it seemed like he had a rocket strapped to the back of him at one point, and then it all turned.
You know, I mean, around this point, I think he's pigeonholing himself a little bit. Other than Zombieland,
oh man,
because Zombieland, he's just a pretty decent guy overall, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Everything else, though, he's, you know, there's a twinge or taste of dick to basically every major performance he's playing, if not all complete dick. So it's
maybe he was trying to compensate for being like too pasty white dude.
I don't know how I feel about him. So when an actor plays the same role, I don't know, maybe that's just his personality. I don't want to judge him for that. It's hard for me to know what kind of actor they are, and then when they just churn into Jesus Christ, like the shittiest movie after the shittiest movie, it seems like, for like the last 5 or 6 years, it's hard to know where they are as an actor. But I guess this is probably one of his better performances. You know, he's not the showiest role like fucking The Social Network or anything like that, but it's probably is one of his best performances. It's probably one of the more nuanced and most true to life, so to speak.
Yeah. Kristen Stewart, like, you know, you hear her name and some people are just gonna like go ugh because of Twilight, but you know, like you said, I think she's given a decent number of like really good performances over her career. She's tricky here because it's not that there's nothing to her. Like, there's clearly like stuff going on with that character. It's just because this is told through the eyes of James, you don't get the full measure of it. But I don't know, she's interesting, I think, like, because like I said, she's not like glamorous, like she's just like a girl, but there is something like alluring to her, and I like her like journey makes sense. Some of it's cliched, but she's grieving for her mother, like her father remarried to a woman she hates, and she's got access to all this money, but like that doesn't in any way make her happy. She is like very self-destructive, clearly, and I think her journey is basically she just didn't account for a James to come along and like actually be nice, I guess. I might have wanted to see a little bit more for the character, but
I agree and I disagree. I think the one point I definitely agree with you from is that this story is told through James a little too much for Emily to have nearly as much depth as he gets.
Yeah.
I think the advantage is that, once again, the director leaned towards empathy with all the characters, and Kristen Stewart's performance gave so much humanity for the character that it did compensate for that a lot. But I think the area I disagree is, I think, and it kind of reminds me, did you ever see Don John?
Yeah.
Joe Scarlett and Scarlett Johansson. And I thought this kind of reminded me of that, in that I'm like, okay, you're telling kind of the story of how these two humans are kind of caught in the same, like human trap, where they're kind of caught making decisions that they don't know they want to be making. There's pressure that they are in judgment and gender roles that they're expected to conform to, and they're yada, 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 yada. But because it's told entirely from a male perspective, there's almost like this inherent judgment cast against the female, because you don't get to see as much from their perspective.
Kinda, yeah, but I think that's like the entire point of the end, is that like he doesn't judge her.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think this movie kind of gets around that in the end, and I think a nuanced reading of it does give you that. And actually, there are not entirely even nuanced. It's like, the director clearly just has Jesse Eisenberg saying, "You're not a bad person for doing this. You're allowed to do things too," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They kind of do spell it out for you, so it's not entirely nuanced. But yeah. I do think, especially in the first half of the movie, you might not lean towards empathy on Kristen Stewart's side if you come into the movie with a certain worldview.
Sure, absolutely, but that's on you.
Sure, but I think, once again, I think this is a movie that deserves a kind of equal screen time for those two characters, equal perspective, and there are some traps in there that they fall into that they're also attempting to climb out of at the same time. But I do think the fact that those traps are there needs to be acknowledged, because basically, both characters are kind of just like, I can relate to Jesse Eisenberg's plight so much. Basically, it's like you struggle romantically for a really, really long time. You are constantly telling yourself, like, wow, you really want to be with someone, you want to have a meaningful relationship, and then as soon as you actually get that, you kind of get this, not confidence so much, but a sense of like, oh, well, if I can get this, what else can I get?
Is that how you read it, with what happens there?
In part. I think it's...
He does get, a bit big for his boots, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's not conscious, it's not evil, it's more just...
He's feeling himself.
Yeah, no, it's just being human and flawed, and kind of, especially when you're in your early 20s, you almost kind of feel invincible to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And I think Jesse Eisenberg's journey here was so very, very human and so very relatable for me in that way, where totally expected that he would go on the date with Lisa P, for instance. And really...
Yeah, but Connell puts that idea in his head to,
sure,
but get him away from M.
Sure, but, I think
he still does it, yeah.
He still does it, and he didn't fucking... there wasn't Inception involved.
No.
It didn't require 3 levels of dream work to make it happen. It was,
Yeah, it was he fully made out with her and then was trying to grope her and stuff.
And it was clearly at the front of his brain, and maybe he wouldn't have listened to it, maybe he would have ignored it more, but it was still something that's there. And
I think part of it is it's an impulse that anyone would have, and it was.
I'm not judging him.
No, I know. It's like a figure that is seen as like the coolest dude in the park, Connell, is almost like giving him permission to do this thing that he might otherwise not have, and then once he has that permission, he just fully like goes, he like runs with it. So it's not that like Connell like tricks him into it or anything. It's just, I feel that like that kind of, you know, the cool culture and the like trying to find yourself thing, like that leads down these kinds of paths.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. But I think also at the same time, you go seeking subconsciously or consciously that permission from people you know are going to give you that permission.
Yeah. And I think it handles this very topic very honestly, in a way that
for sure
a lot of films take sides, and I don't think this one does, and I actually really like that about it.
It tackles it here honestly.
Yeah.
I think the only way it could have been better if there wasn't that melodramatic element of Ryan Reynolds inserting himself into it. So I think Reynolds is definitely seen as the most not likable person in the movie, the least pathetic person. So to see him kind of like pulling the strings at all kind of cuts at the honesty of it a little bit. But
kind of
overall, on the whole, it still does tackle it rather honestly.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, always a worthy and painful topic of exploration.
Yeah.
And,
well,
it should be. I think the film deserves much kudos and applause for doing it.
You mentioned Ryan Reynolds, and like I think he's the next person to get into. But just I do have a couple of like very quick notes that don't really. There's nothing to like talk about, but just things to say about the James and Em like relationship. I think this is an odd thing to talk about, but the scene where they kiss, I think, is like really, really good, and I think quote unquote kiss acting is an underrated thing, and I think she sells the hell out of it. Like she does these little like eye movements after they kiss, and just her reaction to being kissed by him for the first time, I think, is actually like tremendously good, and like not something that is brought up when people talk about what is a good and bad actor. I like that. Like I said, like she's set herself up in a way where like she's not accounting for someone like James. She's just kind of doing things to. I don't know. She doesn't know what she's doing, I think, is the point. And
no, she's finding herself. She's going through this incredibly, once again, honest journey of being like, what is it that I want?
Yes.
And a really hot dude is expressing interest in me, and like, fuck it, like, why would I not be doing this?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
And I think. I think once again, I think if there's one issue with the film is they want to be that big shocking reveal that these two are sleeping together, and I think that
kind of, but they just sort of put it out there like in the first half hour.
I'm saying,
they don't make a huge. There's not like a dramatic stinger when he walks in. It's just
I think a more substantive, a more fair journey would have been like, we should see Kristen Stewart's perspective long before this, because that's the first time we really only get to see her perspective on the situation. She's going through this journey where she's trying to figure out what she actually wants. Like, is she ready for be with a guy that is? I wouldn't say James is not nice. I would never. Nothing about James strikes me as nice, though.
Really?
I think trying to be nice. I think he wants to be a nice person. He's definitely not a unnice person.
No.
But I guess I don't have as much. I don't put him on much of a pedestal in any regard.
Maybe not a pedestal, no, but like he's nice to everyone would actually be what I would say to that. Like, that's kind of like the whole thing with him and Lisa P is that like he doesn't treat her like she's some like goddess of the park. He just talks to her like a human being, and he expresses like empathy for her like father's situation and everything, and like he's generally like good to everyone we see him interact with.
And that's what I was saying, is that he's not unnice. I think he's tried to be nice. I don't think, when I think of nice people I've met in this world, none of them would be played by Jesse Eisenberg in this movie.
Fair enough.
Like, he is a young person who is not an asshole.
I guess, yeah. I really adore the final scene of the movie because it's so like quiet and awkward and realistic. Like, just them like fumbling around, getting undressed, and like how there's almost no music up until that final moment, and just and then when the end credits hit with the INXS song. I love that. But let's talk about Ryan Reynolds, because I don't know exactly where his career was at this point, but he's definitely the biggest name in this at the time, I would think, surely.
He's definitely the biggest name at the time.
Yeah.
Especially when it was made.
Yeah, definitely. And he plays this, I mean, in a film that isn't about heroes and villains, you know, he's the closest thing to the villain in the film. And I actually think it's I mean, on paper he's just playing like the asshole that's sleeping around or whatever, but I actually think it's I think he plays it really well. Like, he's a sad little man, you know? Like, he had aspirations of being a musician, and he clearly never made it. He works at this park where he's a mechanic or whatever, and like everyone there like thinks he's a rock star. So I guess he gets something from that, but like big picture, like he's not exactly like living the high life. And like, the stuff with his mother where like she calls and he has to go to her to help her, and this dude like cheats on his wife with inappropriately young girls. Like, I don't know what his age is meant to be, but I think M is too young for him. would be a reading, not like to the point it's illegal or anything. Like, she's meant to be in college, but and like this isn't the first time. Like, he takes girls to his mother's basement to have sex with them. Like, all this is like asshole material, and like I'm not going to try and like vindicate him in any way, but like it almost kind of pays off in a way because it's that final interaction he has with James. Like, they have this kind of mentor-protege type relationship throughout, and obviously James is not aware that like Connell is actually like trying to help his own interests, where he's sort of trying to throw a stick in the mud between a spanner in the works, I should say, between James and M. And just it's that final interaction between James and Connell where he overhears Connell bragging about, because the legend is that he jammed with Lou Reed, and he overhears him getting the name of a song wrong, and we earlier actually heard him not recognising one of Lou Reed's most famous songs, and it's just that knowing look when he confronts him with this knowledge that he'd gotten the song wrong, and he just gives him that little smile of like, yeah, you know the truth about me. And just despite whatever personal feelings there might be between them based on M, it's like an actually honest, tender little moment between them where, like, I guess James sees like who Connell really is, and Connell like is vulnerable in that moment. He's like, yeah, you have the measure of me, you know who I am. And then he then just goes back to continue hitting on these more girls to repeat the cycle. Like, he says that like his wife knows everything, but it's all blown over, and it's like he's just going to keep doing this forever. And I think it's well acted by Ryan Reynolds, and just I think a well written like kind of asshole, I guess, is of value. Like, his journey is logical, if not like aspirational. It at least I think rings true.
For sure, it's probably as empathetic as an asshole, a portrayal of an asshole can be, where you don't actually like the character anymore by the end. It's human. He's not a cartoon character. He's just kind of a sad little man.
Yeah.
There's not much redeeming about him, but
no.
You see how he got to be who he was.
Yes. And, he's a small town loser who thought he'd be a rock star, and like he's not happy with his life, but he can't change it, and he just does what he does, and it's like it's pitiable, but
it's like he's pathetic.
Yeah.
I mean, just like what it comes down to, and I think the movie makes clear that this person is pathetic.
Yeah.
Without being cartoonish about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like we've talked about James, we've talked about M, and we've talked about Connell, and like obviously there's a love triangle going on here or whatever. I like that because obviously the M and Connell thing predates her even meeting James, and James and M aren't like quote unquote official when he goes out with Lisa or whatever, and it's not about this, but like you could say they're even or whatever, like they each did a bad, I don't know, but I like that where it comes to like when James finds out, he's obviously really hurt, and like Kristen Stewart's character, like she plays it like she's not bothered when she finds out that he went out with Lisa, but she clearly is not happy about that. But I love that the culmination of that is because if he'd just gotten to like shout at her about this and then that's it, I would have been annoyed. But I like that he then defends her to Lisa P, where Lisa is criticizing Kristen Stewart's character, and he's like, I think she says, I feel bad for Connell, but I have a hard time feeling bad for M because, he's a married man and men can't help themselves and she's a homewrecker. And I love that that James, like, checks her for that. Like, and he even says the line, so what, men can be shitty, but women can't. And there is a lot of that in storytelling, that exact message. And I like that that's where it comes to, where like he doesn't hold any of this against her, like, and like he maybe even in saying that realizes he was wrong for shouting at her previously, I guess. Yeah, I like that little moment.
Yeah, it was definitely a preachy moment from the movie, but
yeah.
a needed one.
Yeah.
As someone who interacts with 18-year-olds on a daily basis, the sheer amount of slut shaming that happens on a near daily basis that I have to contend with and discuss and try to correct, as obnoxious as that may sound, as best I can, is absurd.
Yeah.
You know, it's a rare moment where I'd say some preaching was some fucking needed. To me, there's not a single action that I think Kristen Stewart took that I think was really wrong in this movie.
No. And I don't think she actually sleeps with him after James and her kiss, and like she goes to break up with Connell, and that's when she's caught like with him. So I actually don't think she was ever really doing anything.
Even if she was not the case, I think it's best. I mean, worst case scenario, she's being punished for doing things that guys do all the fucking time.
Yep.
But I think that's kind of an interesting. I think that's one of the most interesting aspects of the movie, that it makes a point, literally, through its main character, that what Kristen Stewart was doing was not wrong.
And and he then goes and tells her that to her face as well, wherein like she's ready to like write the entire relationship off because she feels she wronged him, and he's basically I don't care what happened, like you're a good person, like big picture is his stance on it, and I think that's a healthy way to have dealt with it.
And also, almost suspiciously healthy for a 22-year-old. I think also, when he says, like, if you avoid everyone that you're, I can't remember the line, but
if you avoid everyone you screw up with, or you can't avoid everyone you screw up with. Yeah,
which I thought was kind of just a really beautiful take-home message from the movie, and gives the movie some much needed. It's just a good. These are good things for movies to be saying.
Yes. We've been talking about this for longer than I anticipated, so I will motor through the rest of this, but that's like the meat of the movie. But Martin Starr and Paige Howard, they have a very sad little side story. Where Martin Starr is playing Joel, who is kind of more implicitly a geeky character. He's not as handsome as Jesse Eisenberg is, and, there's clearly stuff at home that he's very embarrassed about. He feels he doesn't fit in. Like, he did Russian literature, and like he acknowledges there's nothing you can do with that. He seems like a very depressed character generally, and he has this little you see him and her character sort of at parties, and they make out when they're drunk. He then is very happy about this. Her family are Catholics, find out about this. He is Jewish, and I don't know how happy she is about it. I feel on some level she's making an excuse. I don't know. But Kristen Stewart unloads on her for being a bigot. And just Joel generally is sort of the sad, like, man left out almost, because you don't get a nice resolution to his narrative. I like that he gives Jesse Eisenberg shit for not appreciating having good things. And, like, you can say that's just about Emily. But just generally, like, he's not going to get... his family have fallen on some financial trouble, so he's not going to get to go to Europe, and he may not be able to go to the huge grad school he wants to. But, he's graduated college, and, like, he's got it relatively good. Like, his life isn't over just because of that, and I do like that he, calls him out for that.
Yeah, it's kind of basically the character he's been stuck playing forever. Which is that, yes, he's a bit of a geek, and yes, he is not attractive, basically, by any sense of the word. But he dives into it so much as a human being that it's just like, you know what? Like, there's eventually a line where you're just a bad person. Like, you're just not pleasant. You're not nice. You're a pain to be around, and it's something that was really explored in Party Down. Show, where it was just like, you know what? Like, the cliche attractive guy over there makes way more of an effort than being nice than you ever do.
Yeah,
it's
that like
he's the Gamergate nerd.
Yes, exactly.
If they're ever gonna make a Gamergate movie, he should be one of the Gamergate nerds. Like, that's probably the character he's been playing forever. So they portray with a bit more empathy than Party Down, but he's got his own growing up to do too that hasn't quite happened yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill Hader and Kristen Wiig, as you said, they're not available much. They are the comic relief in this movie. They show up, they say funny stuff, and then we get back to the drama of it. In saying this, it's gonna sound like I'm supporting sexism, but I actually think it's a really funny touch that he's actually the junior manager and she's in charge of the park, even though their entire dynamic is the opposite. And, like, there's no way that's not, like, sexist, but I don't know, I think they pull it off in a way that is quite funny, because it's not overt. You have to read their name badges to know that.
I didn't realize you were sexist, but...
I was what? Sorry?
Okay. A sexist.
Oh, no, I was a sexist, yeah. I don't know, I just think that's funny.
I don't think it's funny that you're sexist.
Okay.
It's alright.
Okay. Anyway, yes.
We can take care of that one in post.
Yeah, we'll remove that entirely. Matt wins all arguments. Yeah, they're very funny. Finally, they don't really bear discussion, but I actually think Wendy Malick and Jack Gilpin as James's parents are actually a fun little combo. I think the dad's little drinking problem, where he has this knowing look when the bottle is put on the table and they assume it's James's, and he just has this look of like, be cool, son, be cool. I think that's pretty good. But yeah, like they're two good, or I don't know if they're good actors, but you know, they're good at what they do. And I think they're a nice little touch on the end there. I guess that's everyone. Oh, Lisa P. Lisa P is, you know, not the most nuanced character, but I do like that there is slightly more going on than just, hey, I'm the cool chick. Like, she has sort of a tragic sort of delusion of class. I don't know, like she talks about wanting to go out with a nice guy for a change, and I don't know, it's ever so slightly more than just the cliche, like, hot chick or whatever. There could have maybe been a bit more to her, and that is everyone. So, if you would like, we can now transition over to Hoop Dreams.
Yes.
Alright. Okay, so Hoop Dreams is a documentary, a basketball documentary that you would think I would have seen as an enormous basketball fan. I have seen a lot of shitty basketball movies just because they're about basketball, including The Basketball Diaries, which Mike thought I was going to watch by accident instead of this. But I had never seen Hoop Dreams, and in the same way that you were kind of taken aback that Adventureland was my favourite movie, I didn't, before I watched it, understand why this would be yours. I now do understand why it's your favourite movie. Like, on the surface of it, it's a documentary following two kids with aspirations of going to the NBA or like a successful life involving basketball. In reality, it's very much about social issues, about schooling, about America, about classism, about disenfranchisement, all this stuff. All topics that, if you've been listening to this podcast, you will know are important to you. And, you know, we don't talk about your profession, but I think that would also be key to why you would get so much out of this movie. It's very long, but I wasn't bored at any point. It's very good. It started out as it was just supposed to be like a 30-minute PBS thing with, oh, here are some kids at a playground, and then they just followed these two around, and before they knew it, they'd been filming them for several years, and they had, you know, so many hours of footage, and it turned into this documentary that is incredibly revered. I don't know. I don't even know how to talk about it because it's like a real journey, but just parts of it are so shocking. It's not that I'm like ignorant to some of the issues raised with like the dark side of pushing sports on kids in America in a way that it's not done in the rest of the world, and like there are positives to that in that, you know, it produces great athletes, but it's also got an incredibly dark side, something that I've seen in a lot of stuff that I like to watch. But just sort of seeing actually seeing the way these two kids are treated by different members of different people in the education system is shocking. It's at times very disgusting, and I don't know, just seeing parts of this are triumphant, parts of it are incredibly depressing. They had some really, really fortunate, lucky accidents in it, in the way that it all turned out.
I almost interrupted you at the beginning of this podcast to clarify this. I decided to hold off for now. This is my favorite movie of all time, but I also consider it by far the greatest film of all time.
Okay.
I don't think any movie that I've seen has come close to capturing humanity the way this film does. I don't think any movie has captured the tragedy that is America as well as this film has. I don't think any movie has called into question basically every American value and really put a microscope on the consequences of how America treats its people, particularly its poor people, particularly people of color. And I think they did all that in one of the most compelling ways possible, which is what they just sat back and listened. They just sat back and watched and let, these two families tell their own story. There is obviously a narrator, which, I can see for some people being a bit of an issue, but I do think the narrator mostly just kind of fills in the blanks for what's going on to provide context.
Because they couldn't, they didn't have the budget to film them for all that long sometimes, so they did need to say what had happened. But I think they filmed for 4 days in their first year, and then 10, and then eventually a lot. But it is necessary. It is
what I always... And it wasn't even about the families, railing against the system much or anything like that. It's more just saying, hey, these are real families in America, and not only is this what they're going through, not only does it represent what a lot of families are going through on a daily basis, they are almost still, in some ways, luckier than some.
Yeah.
And I don't think any film has come close to capturing really just the stink of America.
Yeah.
And at least how it treats its own people, nearly as well as this film.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any... I think that is the most important role that art can serve in America, is pointing out how much of a fuck-up the country is as a whole.
You're making me look like an asshole here, while mine is about just, middle-class, well-off people, struggling.
Do I want to be in a relationship, or do I want to bone the hot girl? Life is hard.
And yours is about genuine social issues and everything.
Yeah. On a personal level, the only high school film studies class that my school offered. This was a film for it, and it blew me away. As a class as a whole, at the very end of it, we all went, how can we keep watching? Is there more? Is there why isn't this just a perpetual television show that never ends? And I it's not just the information that you get on a narrative level. This is one of the most breathtaking and compelling narratives ever told.
And it's all, real.
Yeah, and it's and like I said, for the most part, it's mostly just them stepping back and filming.
Yeah, that is very notable. There are a couple of times where they ask them questions, which is obvious, it's impossible
trying to get
not
certain
to do
answers.
That.
You're definitely trying to get certain answers with those questions. But
generally, it doesn't seem like it's that hard to get them talking about what they talk about, and a lot of it is just, this is what happened, and what you said before about it's not about them railing against the system, you're right. For the most part, they don't really complain. It's just, this is how it is, and we're making the best of it. There are a couple of instances where they point out how shitty this is and how it's not right, but that's sad in its own way that they just live with that.
Yeah, and it's not that they would be wrong to complain or would be bad if they complain. But I'm saying, my point is more just that they don't editorialize in the movie a lot. They let the event speak for itself, which is infinitely more powerful. I don't. It's hard. It's hard to even describe this movie. It's an experience in so many ways that
so much happens.
Listening to us to talk about it, I would say it does a disservice, but more just you're getting 1/1,000,000th of the value of actually watching it. Yeah. And it's hard to sit here and say, go watch this 2-hour and 50-minute documentary right now. But I've never met anyone who felt they wasted their time watching this. I've never met anyone who didn't immediately want to learn everything that happened to these two kids afterwards after they watched this movie.
I think it's very important. I know there are films that are protected or classified as culturally important and put into museums or whatever. I feel this should be one of them. If it isn't,
it's in the Criterion collection for a reason.
Okay.
There's a really great Criterion Collection DVD for it with a really great booklet and lots of commentaries that I have. Really recommend everyone picks it up. Yada, yada, yada. And, this is not it just touches on so much bullshit in the country
Yeah.
in so many ways. By once again, I think I keep coming back to this point by just sitting back and listening.
Yeah.
And as Matt alluded to, like, I am a teacher in a quote unquote underprivileged urban area with no white kids in the school. I am white, so that's and we talk about all the time, like, what is why are white people the way they are? This is a conversation or a question that my students have asked me from time to time.
It's a fucking valid question.
I'm like, yeah, I know. It's something I ask myself all the time.
We are the worst. Straight white dudes are the worst thing on the planet.
But anyway, what I just said was just like, honestly, the biggest problem is that they just don't sit back and listen and not recognize your voice is not needed on every issue. And
yeah.
And that's something that you need a really long time to really understand, or especially a really long time to be able to vocalize. But it's just like, there are some issues where you just need to sit back and listen. It's not your time to speak.
Yeah.
It's so important just to recognize when it's your time to speak, to know when your voice is needed or valued in any way.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the treatment of black people in America, white people's voices are just really not needed all that much. That doesn't mean they can't be allies. It doesn't mean they can't help. That means they can't be leaders or co-leaders or on the front lines. Yeah. But the most valuable thing you could do in this situation is just to sit back, listen, and learn what people who are actually being oppressed, what they're going through.
Yeah. Because that's a real thing. Like, you get these people that, like, they present themselves as, like, allies to whatever plight it might be, but it's very like dumb in the way they go about it, where it's like, here's my take on it, and like, here's how I I work in an office with most of the people are good, nice, switched on people, but there are definitely some people who are slightly more privileged, are slightly more well off, and they say things like, the thing about insert country is they think this, and it's like, don't talk for like other people that you don't know anything about. And it's infuriating whenever you hear it. It's a real issue. And oh man, you see some of that in this movie. Like, you see some bad white people in this movie. I said to you that, like, there's a scene where a large part of it is Arthur, one of the two kids, goes to this. It's a private school, right? The St. Joseph's.
Yeah, St. Joseph's private school.
Yeah.
It still exists.
Okay. And it's funded by the Hoop Dreams. So, I don't know. There's like a foundation that's been set up. He, for one reason or another, like, he has to leave, and they still owe them some tuition, and they won't release his transcripts to his new school until the money is paid. Which, for one thing, is fucking disgusting. Like, holding a kid's future hostage. Like, yeah, fine, they owe you money, but that's not the way to handle this. And the scene where they go in and talk to a financial, I don't know, whoever, at St. Joseph's to try and work this out and say, this is what you owe, this is what we'll do. The things he's saying are, in theory, nice, where he's like, how's he doing? And like, I want to help people, and that's of course what we want to do. And like, Arthur's parents are very thankful when he does them this enormous privilege of like releasing the transcripts or whatever once they pay. But just the way he interacts with them, especially when they're leaving, when they want to like shake his hand and hug him, he looks like they are literally disease, and he wants to do nothing but get them the fuck out of his office, and it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, there are a number of moments like that throughout the film. It's sad. I don't know. Sad. It's, I don't know exactly what else to talk about.
Because I mean, we can't really break it down like a film, because it's not like there's characters and themes. Like, it just is what it is, and like, it's.
I think the biggest thing to talk about, I guess, is it's obviously not a great comparison to compare modern athletics to slavery, because modern athletes are paid exorbitant amounts of money, and slaves are obviously paid nothing. And slaves.
That's how that worked. Okay.
Yes, but I think there's a really powerful scene, powerful line from William, one of the two students, players, subjects, at the end of the film that I really think captures the most important theme. Is that everyone comes up to me and says, when you make it, don't forget about me. And I said, I want to tell them, if I don't make it, don't forget about me.
Yeah.
And basically the way athletics are set up in this country, 1% to 1% to 1% will actually make it and be able to live the rest of their lives on the money they make from athletics. But for black people, especially black men, the models that culture tell them are the paths to success for a lot of them. And I'm not saying this as this is a conversation I've had with them. Is everyone thinks you have to be a rapper or a ball player if you want to be successful. And I'm always so taken aback when I've seen middle schoolers I went to said I hate that about that. Like, why is that the only thing I can do? And I'm just like, wow, that's so much more well thought out than I possibly could have said, let alone at your age. And I think this movie captures that idea so well, is that they are conditioned to believe that this is their only path outside of oppression.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, you see so many films and TV shows that deal with sports, and more often than not it is basketball, but it's seen as the only way to escape from the life that they feel they're destined to live. And there are, you hear these lines about you better have a good jump shot or you're selling drugs or whatever, and it's that's so fucked up. And this premium is put on athletic talent where we worship you, we'll do anything you want, you have this, do this, we love you. And then when it's an injury or it's I don't want to do this anymore or whatever, suddenly garbage.
Yeah.
And William in particular is treated that way.
And never mind the kids who don't make it. Think about the 95% of them that never had a chance, that never even tried.
Yeah.
And for them, there is no not parachute, but there is no quote unquote savior trying to pluck them out of the classroom to give them a scholarship to some private high school that will put them on a path to college. If they don't have that, then there is no savior coming. It just makes it that much harder.
Yeah.
And I think, a concept that I think is crucial to understanding racism in modern America is, while there is less outwardly, using the N-words and lynching of black people.
Yeah.
Well, obviously that still exists, but there's less of that.
Yeah.
Racism, or is a big part of racism today, is that your margin of error as a black person is so much smaller.
Yeah.
Your ability to fail and come back from failure, which is a completely natural human thing to do, is so much smaller.
Yeah.
As for me, I think about all the time, it's just I grew up in a household there wasn't pressure to go to college, but it was the expectation that you would.
Mm-hmm.
And I was continuously put in situations to succeed where that was never under threat in any way. And while I definitely, was blessed with intelligence and a fair amount of it, quite frankly, in my opinion, I didn't have to work incredibly hard really until I went to my fancy high school to have to do that. So I didn't even have to worry about failure. I didn't have to worry about effort for so much of my life. Something would just happen. And it really wasn't until after college where I had to be wow, if I don't actually push myself, all of my dreams may not come true. And,
the plight of the white man. You may not be the special god that you are.
I know. And that is something to be, I'm not going to say what it means to be black in America, but one of the issues being black, dealing with oppression as a black person in America, is that you have to be at your best way more often if you want to avoid failure. Because if failure happens for you, failure has way worse long-term consequences.
Yeah. And you see that with William's brother Curtis, who can't get a job. And he openly talks about it, I don't have a college degree, so this is the best I can hope for. And
I think comparing William to his older brother Curtis and to Arthur is very important in that way, because it's for William, he did not fail early in high school as a basketball player. Arthur did.
Yeah.
Arthur was not the standout basketball player that they maybe thought he was going to be based on his freshman year. So that means Arthur's grades are all of a sudden a problem. That means Arthur's financial situation is all of a sudden a problem. And that represents now, you failed at passing your classes. You failed to meet your financial obligations.
Yeah.
So now you must be sent away.
And then that fucking coach basically, like, when he gets rid of him, like, he talks about him in ways that are like, he's not good enough, doesn't try hard enough, whatever, doesn't want to know. And then, by the end of the film, when William and his team have not made it, and then Arthur, like, they cross paths. Arthur's team, I guess they're playing in the same building, or, like, Arthur's build.
We sure could have used you today.
Yeah, and he's, like, fucking buttering him up, like, they're best friends. It's like, fuck you, dude. And, like, he doesn't give a shit about William now, and he, like, holds his injury against him when he made him play through it. Well, he didn't make him, but, like, he should have...
He should have stepped in and said
his position as an adult, as an educator, as a guardian, is to say no. For his good, and he just saw basketball in him. That's all he cares about from him. So he was like, "Oh well, if you're saying you can play, then you're going to play." It's like, no, he is a child. He is not able to make that decision, or he's able to, but you shouldn't be giving him that much autonomy.
Yeah. So Arthur failing as a 14-fucking-year-old, meant that he's sent away from this really high-performing school, giving him the services he needs, to a dysfunctional, urban high school that is sadly all too familiar to the way urban high schools are run today and look and sound today, where he's not getting the services he needs on any level. William's failures come, or quote-unquote failures come later, after either, I think during his sophomore years when the knee injury happens, or during junior year. I can't remember.
Sophomore, he's like, they say he's recovering from a slight injury, and then he injures himself in practice and misses almost the whole year.
That injury then derails his quote-unquote his whole life from that point on. Yeah. And everything from that point forward, it becomes much harder for him.
Yeah,
he still has it so much easier than Arthur for not failing 2 years earlier, because William is able to get a promise from Marquette that his 4 years of college will be paid regardless of what happens to his knee, and they're offering him that at the end of his junior year.
Yeah.
So just the difference between failing when Arthur did and when William did makes such a difference in their long-term trajectory.
Yeah. And then even when Arthur, like, quote-unquote succeeds, because I texted you this, that, like, it's such a, like, or you called it like they got so lucky with this happy accident, in that William is obviously the better basketball player.
Yes.
At one point, or maybe overall.
More talent, more physically mature.
Yeah, more...
Clearly a better prospect on paper than Arthur. Yeah. But by the end of their senior years, there's a drive in Arthur that is...
Yeah, and, like, he propels his smaller school to a... Like, I think it's...
Well, not smaller school, but less accomplished basketball school.
Sure. And I thought they were, like, a step below, like, in terms of leagues. It doesn't matter, but, he gets his, like, moment where they don't, like, win it all, but they go to the sort of state tournament, I think.
Yeah, they're the third-ranked team in the state of Illinois, which is a big... Or they get third place in Illinois, and Illinois basketball is super fucking competitive.
Yes, it is. And after that, he's offered a place. I mean, his financial situation is different generally, but he takes a place at a junior college that, like, I've never fucking heard, and I wouldn't expect to hear of junior colleges, but, like, I've never fucking heard of it. Like, they put them up in this tiny little house that's got, like, wooden boards everywhere, and it's like, it's so depressing. Like, even when he succeeds, he like, William sort of, I don't want to say he gets away with it, but, he's very talented, but then, like, quote unquote doesn't deliver, but he still gets his college ride, and he had every right to do what he does, and, like, they say in the end of the film that, like, he dropped out, but then with encouragement he stayed. And at first I think they imply that, like, he was just going to go to college and not play basketball, but then he eventually rejoins the team, and, like, fucking good for him that he did that, but that he got that opportunity, and Arthur, who sort of arguably performed better than him when it mattered, gets almost nothing for it.
Yeah, lost in all this is that, there's that... It's crazy that, motivation plays such a large role in professional athletes or high-level athletes in general. Like, it kind of just blows my mind. It's like, what do you mean? You don't try your hardest all the fucking time? Like, what's the fucking matter with you? But, like, Arthur's drive to succeed is, like, Michael Jordan-esque in the way they portrayed in the film in his final 2 years in Marshall. Whereas Gates is kind of just, like, coasting up to a certain degree. Or
and you see him...
his drive is diminished.
Yeah. And you see him fall out of love with basketball. But I think probably because of how it's handled with the injury. Like, you see him sitting on the bench while the team... He's come off the team sheet and all that. And, like, coach doesn't want to know and all that. And it's just, are you better yet? And I think he sort of recognises his situation.
Yeah. And then also... So, again, we're talking about, like, the differences between Arthur failing at age 14 and William, quote-unquote, failing at age 16, 17. But then look at... because Arthur got the push to even play and be good at playground basketball at 14 versus his friend Shannon, who did not get that opportunity, who's then, Shannon therefore fails at age 12 for not being in a position to look great on the playground when the guy happens to be driving by. So Shannon is then pushed on a completely different track in life where by the time he gets to high school, because he's not as good as Arthur, the coach doesn't want to take both of them because they're both kind of knuckleheads. So Shannon sees his only way out as being dealing drugs. So then we eventually at one point we stopped hearing from Shannon. We stopped seeing Shannon in the film. And I know he's not a major player in the film, but I think it's so important to see the different layers of when we say the margin of error being so much smaller. If you don't have all these gifts and they don't last as long as possible, your path forward is black man. And while that's still the case, even more so 25 years ago when this was shot, your options are limited. And then, as you said, we see it again with William's older brother, Curtis. Curtis, who seemed to have the drive, who seemed to have the physical gifts, lost his way in college, as a lot of fucking people do. But because basketball was the only path he was told he could succeed at, he didn't have anything else to fall back onto. And he didn't get his college degree. And, fucking losing your way in college is happens to pretty much everybody at one point. How long it lasts is obviously person to person, but him not being able to be perfect at age 20 basically puts him on a far worse track in life as a result, in a way that quite frankly, odds are a white person might not necessarily have to deal with, especially a white person of middle, upper middle, upper class, etc. And it's so fucking depressing. It's but it's told so beautifully here. It's
effortless, or like
it comes across as effortless. It comes across as epic in scope, yet tiny at the same time.
Yeah.
And there are so many also beautiful, happy moments. I mean, when Arthur's mom gets her nurse's degree or whatever it is, like tears to my class. I'll never forget, like everyone being so fucking goddamn happy in my high school senior film studies class when that happened. There are like genuine moments, like Arthur's leading his rundown high school to the state championship or to the finals, whatever. Like, it's just breathtaking. And there's also just so many beautiful small moments captured on film. I think some of the most memorable ones is when Arthur is making the decision about which junior college to sign with. His father's in and out of the picture throughout the movie, but Arthur's mom asked him to come sit in on this meeting, and just the looks Arthur gives his father as he's speaking, like
he does not want him to be there at all.
One, he doesn't want to be there at all, clearly. But then when Bo, Arthur's dad, says, and don't just do this because it will save your mom some money. Don't just do this because it'll save us money. If we have to go into the hole for you, we will. And the look Arthur just gives, like, oh yeah, like, you're going to go into the hole. My mom's the one that's going to have to go into the hole.
Like, fuck you, dude. And she even sort of says that. She's like, oh, good of you. And he tries to, like, step in and clarify what he meant, but it's like, no, I think we know what you meant.
To me, in art, I don't think there's any such thing as perfection, which may not be a surprise to anyone listening to this, but this is the closest I've ever seen. It's beautiful. It's everything. And I'm glad you got something out of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. At first I was kind of like, is this just going to be like 3 hours of just a kid that wasn't good enough to be in the NBA and he's going to cry about it? It's like, nope, it's not about that at all. It's not something that I don't think I'll be like watching this too many times because it is kind of,
it's a lot.
It is a lot, and it's a very depressing subject matter, but it's an important subject matter. It's definitely something I would recommend that people fucking watch if you want. I mean, I'm not American, so it's for you to tell me like if this is an accurate portrayal of American life. But from my perceptions of it as a foreigner through media and news and whatnot, it does seem like it rings very true of American like society. was going to say culture or life, but yeah, society. And like I said, it's not that I was ignorant to this kind of thing, because it does come up. Like there are a lot of films not as good as this that try and tell a similar story or in the same way, and a lot of them use basketball, some of them use American football or various other things. But like the depth, the raw way this is presented, quietly but importantly, is beautiful, I would say.
For sure. I can't recommend this movie enough. I think it's, like I said, I think it's the greatest movie of all time. It's my favorite movie of all time. It's the first thing that comes to mind when anybody asks me that question. I don't always give it as the answer because I don't feel like having to explain it all. Like I remember, like one time in this like bullshit film studies class in college, that's what I said. People just gave me like the blankest fucking stares in the world. And I'm just like, you know, like, what's
your bullshit answer when you need to just have an easy time?
I probably go The Third Man.
Okay.
I almost went with that for this one just because I thought, you know, it's a little much to ask you to watch Hoop Dreams. But
I mean, you've got the in that I am an enormous basketball fan, so
yes, that's true.
I am drawn to it in a way that I would maybe not have been otherwise. But yeah, glad I saw it. Well, I guess that's it. That's 1 year of the Real World podcast. We're not done by a long shot. We have just multiple emails of plans for the next months, possibly even a year's worth of content coming your way.
I didn't want to say it, but it's like I was like adding it up all in my head. I was like, did we just plan out the next 3 years of our Thursdays? Like,
kind of. Yeah, basically, there's a lot of stuff. It may not all get made, but yeah, it's been a good journey. Like starting with, hey, do you want to just talk about X-Men for a bit? And it's kind of grown, and here we are. We write reviews, we write articles, we have multiple podcast series. We've branched out from superhero movies. I tremendously enjoyed Firefly, and I think we got some cool stuff planned that we will get to. In theory, because we've recorded a lot of this before Mike goes away for a bit, in theory, the next major thing you hear after this will be Spider-Man.
Spider-Man 1, yes.
Yeah.
You should hear an analysis of the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans next week, the Mark Webb Spider-Mans the week after, and then Spider-Man Homecoming the week after.
Yeah, and somewhere between then and there's some stuff I may have executed without Mike that will clearly be terrible, because what is any of this without Mike Thomas's opinions on everything?
Nothing.
Exactly. Fucking nothing. All of you are nothing. I'm nothing. He is everything. Bow at the altar of Mike Thomas. Enter therealworld.com. Mike and Matt on SoundCloud. I've enjoyed the last year with you, Mike. It's been good. We've bonded. We've come to a better understanding of each other. Well, we're not just...